Express? Today, we can send our loved ones emails and text messages in an instant. But in 1860, it could take months to get a message to someone across the country. Believe it or not, the fastest way to send mail was on the back of a horse.
Okay. So think about how you see your parents on their cell phones and they're sending messages and, oh, I need to tell somebody this or that. I'm going to do it right now. And they get that message right away. We don't even think much about it. We just go, oh, we're going to get that person that message right now. What if you had to wait months to get a message? If you had something to say, you wouldn't be able to say it right away. That would have to be written in a letter and sent across the country to someone.
On a boat.
In this case, on a horse.
On a horse.
So I would like you to underline, it could take months to get a message.
To someone across the country.
Mail was on the back of a horse. Now this was back in 1860, right around the Civil War. So people decided they needed a fast way to get information across the country. And this was the fastest at the time they could think of because wagons were too slow. So let's turn our page.
Wait, can we watch it? Whoa! The video. This is awesome.
The fastest mail in the West. From 18...
We will watch the video. But first, let's read the heading. The fastest mail in the West. From 1860 to 1861, the Pony Express was the fastest way to send mail across the country. So just like I was saying, there were not any other ways to get mail across to people fast. Let's number our paragraphs before we start reading. Where is our first paragraph? Vanessa? Okay, first indentation right here. Let's put a 1 for imagine. Imagine that you lived. How about our second paragraph, Jeffrey?
The subheading.
Oh, there's a subheading. Where is it? Where's the subheading? Some people, okay.
Because I thought I didn't see that one.
Third paragraph, Matthew.
The subheading.
Right under the subheading, indentation here, 3. And fourth paragraph, Tori. At. Fifth paragraph, Caitlin.
When the horse.
When the horse. And sixth.
Is there 9 paragraphs?
Sixth paragraph, Tegan. Eventually.
Yeah.
How about
I can't really see that
seventh, Karina? Which one is it? Riding for, okay. Eighth paragraph, Kylie?
But pony.
But pony. 9. Sydney.
The pony.
Okay, 1861. And our 10th paragraph. William.
The Pony Express.
The Pony Express. Okay, so let's start our first paragraph. Yeah, I'm going to read it to you this time. I don't think my sound's going to work the way I'd like. Imagine that you lived in California in the early 1800s. Back then, there were no telephones or computers. The best way to get in touch with someone was to send a letter in the mail. months for a person across the country to get your letter.
Years.
Okay, so what important information does this paragraph tell us?
Years.
Matthew?
It could take months.
It could take months. Okay, so I'd like to see all of you highlighting or underlining. It could take months. Jeffrey?
They had no telephone phones or computers.
Had no telephones or computers, but what does that mean?
They can't text on their phone.
They can't text on their phone. How do they get in touch with someone?
They have a
Vanessa.
letter. They have a letter.
Okay, so we need to underline the best way to get in touch with someone was to send a letter in the mail. And it could take months. So that's why we've underlined it could take months. Best way to get in touch with someone. Our second paragraph. Some people had an idea for a faster way to carry the mail. In 1860, they started the Pony Express. What important information should we underline? Mason?
In 1860, they started the Pony Express.
Okay. Started the Pony Express, 1860. And why did they start that?
So they can get,
Matthew?
because it was a faster way.
It was a faster
So
way.
they can get their mail faster.
Exactly. They need to get their mail faster.
Accidentally.
How it worked.
Mail machine.
How did the Pony Express work? Riders on horses carried mail back and forth between California and Missouri. There were a lot of stops called stations along the way. Sydney?
There were a lot of stop stations along the way.
There were a lot of stops, but what did riders do? What were they doing?
They worked.
They were working to, Sarah?
They ride on horses.
Okay, and what did they do riding those horses? What were they doing? Sage?
Riders on horses carried mail back and forth between California and Missouri.
There you go. I want you to underline that. Let's see. Riders on horses carried mail back and forth between California and Missouri. Are there any words here that we don't know? Kylie?
The one that's at stations.
Stations, the one in bold? Circle that word. Stations. Those were stopping points. That's where they, or checkpoints you could call them, I suppose. You would ride so far, and then that's where they would stop, maybe even change out horses or change out riders. Because you're not gonna go all the way from Missouri to California all in one shot, right? You're gonna have to stop. Right, right. Change out the riders and change out the horses when necessary. There are probably quite a few stations along the way.
Yeah. I thought there was only two.
Only two? Oh, no, there'd be way more than two.
Like 10.
Paragraph 4. At a station, a rider got mail. He put it in a bag on his horse's saddle. Then they were off. So what did he do at the station? Vanessa?
Then they were He put the saddle on.
Because he put, at the station, the rider got mail. And yes, he did put it in a bag on the horse's saddle, but that's what a rider would do at a station, is also get that mail. Paragraph 5. When the horse got tired, the rider would stop at a station. He would take his bag and put it on another horse. Then he'd get the new horse and gallop away. So what else is the rider doing at a station? Tyler? Okay, so let's underline the rider would stop at a station and put his bag on another horse. Put it on another horse. Then he'd get on a new horse. Get on a new horse. So you should have underlined stop at a station, put it on another horse, meaning the mail bag, and get a new horse. Right around the time of the Civil War.
Why didn't they just take the train? And we connected flashlights to those stations.
Don't know. Actually, they only did this for about a year and a half.
Are they horses or mules?
Horses. They used horses.
Or donkeys?
Sydney, did you have a question?
Meals are
Can't
more
hear you.
complicated. What are we supposed to underline?
You're supposed to underline that you would underline stop at a station. And actually you could underline this whole part. Take his bag and put it on another horse. And also he gets a new horse. That horse is tired. It's gone a long distance and he needs a new horse. So it can rest. Paragraph 6. Eventually the rider would get tired too. He would give the mail to a rider at another station, and the new rider would keep going. Riders would keep the mail moving from horse to horse until they reached the end of a route. It took about 10 days to get mail from Missouri to California. 10 days. So that's a lot better than months. No, the riders themselves would only go for about 24 hours at a time. So they would ride, and then
It's a week and 3 days. A week and 4 days.
it took 10 days by horseback. Sarah?
A week is 7 days.
I can hear you, Sarah. Shh.
It took about 10 days.
It took about 10 days. Okay, so let's underline that.
I have a
It took about 10 days.
and that was a week and 3 days.
So what were the riders doing? William?
Well, I had more stuff connecting to what Sarah said on your mind.
Okay, so you had,
It took about 10 days to get mail from Missouri to California.
okay, so let's underline the rest of that. That's important because it took 10 days to what? To get mail from Missouri to California.
But what about California to Missouri?
I would think it would probably be about the same, wouldn't you?
20 days.
The riders would keep moving that mail from horse to horse in those 10 days.
But how do they know where to stop at the station?
There was a route that they followed, so there was a certain way that they went, and then they'd come to the stations. So brave riders. Do you think these riders were brave?
Yes.
Riding for the Pony Express was hard, dangerous work. Riders sometimes fell asleep on their horses. They rode in dark nights with no moon. Some riders had to travel through heavy snow. Wild animals like wolves chased them. So I think the most important part of this paragraph is that first sentence. Riding for the Pony Express was hard, dangerous work.
And the wild animals that will chase them.
That's something that backs up that sentence right there.
And then
The fact that
are we gonna have
going to underline that because that is a supporting detail of our main sentence. Our main idea is that it was very dangerous. The supporting ideas there are that they fell asleep, it was dark, sometimes there was a lot of snow, and it was cold, and there's wild animals that chase them.
But in wild animals and birds, because they could kill the horse. They could kill the horse.
Right.
But
That's part of it being very
the
dangerous.
horse would kill them with it because when something's behind them, they just kick really hard. So do donkeys.
Right, they can defend themselves somewhat.
There's
Mountain lions, yes, mountain lions also. They didn't list that, but I'm sure there were mountain lions in certain areas.
mountain
everybody
lions
already blurted.
and cougar lions are the same.
No blurting. Let's move on to, everyone with me? Eyes up front, voices off. Paragraph 8. But the Pony Express riders weren't allowed to stop for anything. They had to keep going until they reached the next station. Sage.
But the Pony Express riders weren't allowed to stop for anything.
Weren't allowed to stop. Let's underline that.
Why?
They weren't allowed to stop. They had to keep going and going until they reached the next station because they have to keep this moving. If they're going to make this communication work for them, then they need to keep it moving. They can't stop along the way and take a nap or whatever. They keep going.
That's worse than
Right.
because that's the easiest way for a wolf to eat them or something.
To stop, right? That would be more dangerous to stop and then they're not moving, so something might come up on them. Okay, the Pony Express ends. First of all, let's look at the picture. Let's look at this picture up here. This is a real letter that was delivered by the Pony Express.
Whoa.
Look at the fancy handwriting on there.
What does it
I
say?
can't read it actually, but it's very fancy handwriting, and you can see that there's stamps on there. There's stamps on there that say Pony Express, June 12th, San Francisco. So this was a letter.
Where does it say that?
If you have a question, please raise your hand so I know that you have a question. Asher.
This is cool. Cut that out.
I don't believe so.
Like I did.
Sarah. Okay, let's move on to the Pony Express ends. This is paragraph 9. In 1861, an invention called the telegraph let people send messages across the country in seconds. People didn't need the Pony Express anymore. So about a year and a half later, they no longer needed to do it this way. They no longer needed to use the horses to get mail across.
But how did that do that?
The telegraph?
Amazing.
We're going to watch a video that explains it. The telegraph used electricity, and they would take
But it's just like metal and wood.
words and they would make it into a code and send it across country, and then somebody else on the other end would have to decode that message. But this video is going to go into that in more detail to explain it. So what should we underline in paragraph 9? Any ideas there? Kylie?
But people still remember it today. Yeah, it's still.
I'm looking at the paragraph above that. In 1861, an invention called the telegraph. Do you see? Okay, so the telegraph let people send messages across the country in seconds. That's what we should be underlining here. So we went from it taking days to now it's taking seconds to go across the country.
What? This is weird.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they had to bring whenever they needed it.
On the first one, you skipped a video. That's weird.
Let's do our last paragraph. The Pony Express lasted for only about a year and a half, but people still remember it today. They think of the hard-working riders and of the horses galloping along lonely trails to bring people the letters they had waited so long to read. Tyler, what should we do? People still remember it today. I'm going to also underline that it lasted for only about a year and a half, but people still remember it today.
Yeah, but she has to, we have two videos.
So let's go back to our video. Let's do, there are a couple videos here. One of them is right here with the telegraph. So let's watch that one first. Telegraph machine.
The telegraph. The telegraph was an invention that let people send messages over long distances. How did it work? When people wanted to send messages to a friend across the country, this is what they did. First, they wrote out their message and gave it to a person called an operator. The operator turned the words into a code called Morse code. In Morse code, each letter of a word is made of different beeps or clicks. Then the operator used a telegraph machine to send the coded message through electrical wires that stretched across the country. The message traveled all the way to the telegraph station in the friend's town. There, another operator got the code. That operator turned the code back into words. He or she wrote it on a paper called a telegram and gave it to the sender's friend. Message received.
Okay, let's go back to our other video.
But where does it print the paper? It says it's hot.
Sorry, here we go.
What changes over time? Imagine it's 150 years ago. You want to talk to your friend who lives 20 minutes away. What do? You can't call on the phone. Phones weren't invented yet. You can't email. Email wasn't invented yet. You'd probably have to walk over to your friend's home or maybe write a letter. Things change over time. Technology gets more advanced. The way we do things now is different from how people did things long ago. Transportation has changed too. Riding in a horse-drawn carriage used to be one of the fastest ways to go. Now, people use cars. People can take airplanes to go far away. Long ago, people used ice boxes to keep food from spoiling. Now, people use refrigerators and freezers. In the past, kids played with toys like hoops. They blew bubbles and had dolls. Today, kids still play with dolls, bubbles, and hoops. But now, we have all kinds of electronic toys too. The clothes we wear have changed over time too. Long ago, boys wore short pants called breeches. Girls and women wore skirts, never pants. Now, people don't wear breeches very much. Many girls and women like to wear shorts or pants. Schools were also different than they are today. Can you think of things that are in your classroom now that probably weren't there long ago? From the clothes we wear to the games we play, to the ways we get from here to there. Many things have changed over time.
I can already see one. I could see one right now. I can see one right
So let's keep it to ourselves. Voices off. I want to see you raise your hand if you can think of something that's in our classroom that maybe they didn't have back then. Not at all. Sierra,
The Activio.
the Actiview. Right. In fact, they didn't even have this type of material to write on. They just used old chalkboards. What other kinds of things in the classroom do you think did not exist? William?
Someone already said that.
The board itself, so the thing that projects up top, the thing that it projects on, they did not exist. Sage, what do you think? Whiteboard, right? Kylie?
The digital clock.
Digital clock. Tori?
Computers.
Computers. Can you imagine life without all of these things?
I know.
Denmark, do you have one to add?
I couldn't go
I couldn't hear Denmark. Let's keep our voices up.
without the
One
electric.
more time.
A globe.
A globe? No, they did have a globe. They did have something to look at to
water
teach you a
bottle?
globe.
They have lights.
Sierra, can you put the lights back on, please?
No, they didn't. Speaking of
Hey, I don't want to hear any flirting.
Candles. No, they have lights. Go back then when it was
Okay.
dark and I was asleep and then when it was
I
light,
should
they had to
not
wake
hear
up.
any talking right now, baby
Why are
girls.
you making
Kylie, table 5. Voices off. Hey, Gidea game show.
We didn't do the back of it.
Oh, you're right. We didn't do the back of it. Let's do the back first. Thank you, Tyler.
Oh, the front. No, we did the front.
So turn to the back.
How can we do that?
Thank you, table 1, for sitting quietly. I don't hear any voices from table 1. The Pony Express ran from 1860 to 1861. Back then, some parts of our country weren't states yet. Those places were called territories. Look at the map to see which states and territories the Pony Express crossed. So let's look on your Scholastic News at the map that you see. Remember I was talking about they had a route that they followed. That's where there would be stations along the way. So that's why they would know where they were going and how to keep going, because they did have a map they were following. Okay, check your voices, table 6, table 4. Number 1, the Pony Express went between the states of, we have California and Minnesota, Missouri and Oregon, or Missouri and California. Denmark.
Missouri and California.
Missouri and California. Number 2, riders rode blank, east, west, or south to go from Missouri to California. William.
West.
West, from Missouri to California. Okay, number 3, which of these territories did the Pony Express not pass through? New Mexico Territory, Utah Territory, or Kansas Territory? So look at your maps, look at the route that they took. Tyler. New Mexico Territory? Yes. Hey, bonus. In which territory would a Pony Express rider go near the Great Salt Lake? So let's find the Great Salt Lake. What territory is that? Sage. territory.